Hello, friends. Welcome to this podcast. The Beatles. Have you heard any YouTube videos with guys like me talking about the Beatles? Lots? Oh, okay. Um, well, I'm going to talk about the Beatles. Um, there's certain albums people always talk about. There's the Abbey Road album. There's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And then there's the albums that people don't talk about very much. Which ones? I'm joking. People talk about all of their albums all of the time. Every one of their albums is fantastic. Every one of them is on someone's favorite list. You start from Meet the Beatles all the way up to the last one, and everybody loves all of them. So I'm just going to talk about one that I really like that I haven't discussed on this podcast before, but it's called the White Album. Originally, it was just called the Beatles, but it's known now as the White Album. Should I even hold up the cover? Yeah, okay, I'll hold it up. Where's the front? Oh, where is it? Oh, here it is. It says the Beatles right there, very faint. So this album is a double album, and it is perhaps my favorite Beatle album consistently. I mean, I love them all, of course. I love Abbey Road. I love Sgt. Pepper. I love Rubber Soul. I love Revolver. I could go on and on. Magical Mystery Tour is fantastic. But this one, I think, is pretty sort of transcendent. I was talking with a friend of mine recently about albums, the idea of an album, the idea of bands putting together an album's worth of material and having those songs sort of flow into each other as a continuous experience. And how some bands will take a song and put a song after another song because of how it shapes the mood emotionally. Like this one is sort of uplifting, so you want to have something, it guides you through an experience and takes you on a journey, as they say. And a lot of times that means that bands don't want to do an album where the songs are too radically unrelated to each other. A lot of guitar players work really hard on their guitar tone and their style. And so then every song on the album has that kind of tone, that style, and every song sounds like a song by that band, by that artist. But then you had the Beatles in this era, this period when they were working together and separately, and they were basically kind of experimenting on this album with making solo albums in some cases. And you never know. There's all kinds of speculation, all kinds of stuff I won't get into because it's gotten into much better and much more scholarly ways on other sources. But I will say that when I listen to this, I get the feeling of each individual Beatle. The songwriting, the sound of it, the instrumentation, the mood, the emotion, the general feel. You really get the feel for each one of the members on here, and it really is kind of like a bunch of solo albums kind of blended together in a way, and it's also really eclectic and diverse. There's so many different styles on here, different sounds. It sounds like, how many songs are on here? However many songs are on here total, that's how many different bands it sounds like. It doesn't sound like one band, although it's the Beatles. You hear the first note and you're like, that's the Beatles. So what I love about this album is how diverse the experience is, the threads that it takes you along, the trip you go on with this album is so unusually diverse. You can hear so many different sounds, tones, instruments, approaches to songwriting on this album. And this is a great one to listen to. It's a double, it's 2 records. So it's a bit of a commitment, but I totally recommend putting on the headphones, turning down the lights, sitting in your Eames lounge chair with your nice blanket on you and get comfortable get a nice, cup of coffee or whatever else you want, put the headphones on and start this album at the beginning and listen to it all the way through, all four sides. At the end of it, you kind of, I mean, if you're like me, you feel a little bit sort of overwhelmed, a little breathless, like you've just been somewhere. And it's, I know, you can't really say much more that hasn't already been said a zillion times about the Beatles. But this, I think, is this is an interesting album too. It's you got, Sergeant Pepper kind of has a theme running through it, and the songs are all songs and everything. But on here you've got, like, Revolution Number 9. You've got some experimental song forms and some songwriting that's experimental, some tones that are experimental. There are things on here that really hadn't been done before. There's a beautiful looseness to it. There's one moment in here that I know a lot of people have talked about where there's some feedback and you hear a bottle rattling and you hear George Harrison, I believe it's George Harrison's voice, kind of trying to sing along with the rattling bottle or the feedback. And it's a haunting little moment in the studio, and there's a few things like that on here. Like you feel like you're in on the experience with these guys in the studio making this album, like creating these songs. It's a fantastic album. It's the Beatles, of course. It's a fantastic album. There's so many other places you can go to hear people talk about the Beatles in much more informed ways than me. But that is my take on the White Album. I love that album so much. And thanks for listening. And I will talk to you again real soon.